we go into, we tell the people, lock the door, leave the place. It isn't even worth it for an exorcist to go in there.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to the new season of the Warren Files. Tonight we're going to have Bill Slevin co-host, as he knows our guest. So, I figured
Yes.
if it's a lot easier with someone who knows the guy. So, you guys, I mean, we're really booking some good guests this year, and we're starting out with a bang. We've, Bill knows our guest. That's how we got him to come on. And, we talked for a few minutes before the show started, and I think we got some cool stuff to talk about with this guy.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
tonight, So tonight we have David Sloan. I'm not Sloan. He is the caretaker of the Fort Motello Museum in Key West, Florida. He is an author of, how many books does he have? Like 9 or 10, I think.
I don't know. He's got a bunch of different books, some paranormal, some not. So
yeah, exactly. I noticed he's got, it looked like some cooking books and some key lime pie books. So
yes,
we might have to get into some key lime pie chat.
I think the Key West bucket list too. Everything Key West.
Yep. But he's also the author of Haunted Key West, which is so there's Robert the Doll is down there, but there's a lot more stuff down there too that we want him to talk about, because obviously Robert the Doll is probably the most famous. And we'll ask him once we put him on. If I don't want to say Robert the Doll every time, I just want to say Robert. But I don't want to disrespect Robert the Doll, because that things don't go good for people when they disrespect him. So
exactly.
I guess let's just bring him on, and we'll everybody welcome David Sloan.
Hey,
David, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Good.
Hey,
no, thank
David.
you for coming on. So obviously, I think everybody's going to want to hear. I got to go to the comments because they're already pouring in, but everybody's going to probably want to hear about Robert the Doll. Is it polite to call him Robert, or?
Yeah, there's no problem with that. A lot of it has to do with tone.
Okay.
It's mainly a respect thing.
Yeah. Speaking of respect, why don't you tell us the story that you told us backstage about, Ozzy Osbourne's encounter with Robert?
Yeah. So Ozzy and Jack, they started their show, Ozzy and Jack's World Detour, in Key West at the Fort East Martello Museum with Robert the Doll. And Ozzy was disrespectful. He
Go ahead, you can say it.
So, the first thing he does is he farts in front of Robert, and he was talking down to the doll. And then they took one of the plush Robert dolls. The museum sells the miniature Roberts, and they took it on their road trip, and they blamed it for everything that went wrong, flat tires and stuff. So then Ozzy tried to kill it by putting it in the microwave oven. He tried to blow it up on the beach, and it was all done, for good TV.
Yeah.
But Robert didn't like it, and Ozzy started having problem after problem after problem. He cracked his head open. He had a concussion. He had a spine injury that's still causing complications. I think an ATV accident. There's a dozen things.
Yeah.
And he blames all of these things on Robert the Doll. To me, the strangest, Robert the Doll's human companion, Gene Otto, he died from Parkinson's complications with Parkinson's disease. And Ozzy was recently diagnosed with Parkinson's disease.
Yep.
So So it's not something to mess around with. And I saw Jack in Michigan at the Michigan Paranormal Conference.
Yeah.
And we gave him one of the new Christmas edition Robert dolls. And I asked him, I said, hey, why doesn't your dad apologize? And he said, yeah, he really should.
Yeah, he should.
So hopefully that'll be happening.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, not a cool story, but I mean, that's a very, very interesting story. So you said that, and I read your book, and every so often in your book, there's a lot of letters that are written from people that are apologizing because they disrespected them. They didn't follow the rules. First of all, so how many letters have come in, and what are the rules?
He has about 10,000 letters that he's received so far.
Crazy.
And not all of them are apologies. He gets some fan mail too. He gets some people who love him. But the rules with Robert, people will tell you different things. In the museum, right above his case, it says you better ask permission before you take his photo.
Yeah.
I disagree with that. I don't think it's a good idea to ask permission from entities. What I suggest for people is, there's really two basic rules. First one, respect Robert the Doll.
Mm-hmm.
Second one, respect his fort.
Yeah.
So it's all about respect. And people will go in there kind of terrified, like, oh my God, I don't want to do the wrong thing.
Yeah.
You're dealing with multiple entities there, but the main entity to be respectful to, I say, hey, pretend you're talking to a child.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Give the same respect that you would a child.
That's a good point, though, about asking permission to take a photo, because you're right. Once you attempt to make that line of communication and ask, it's almost like an invitation to, have some issues potentially.
Yeah, it's almost like inviting them in. And the other thing is, I've always felt it's about respect, and somebody can take a picture and not be disrespectful.
Yeah. Yep.
And then they'll come out of the museum saying, I didn't ask permission and I took a picture and nothing happened to me.
Right.
And it's, it's like, well, of course not. You were respectful. But then there's people who intentionally don't ask, that want to do it out of disrespect.
Yep.
And then they have the issues. So yeah, some people don't ask permission and do have issues, but others don't. And, I don't think just by asking permission that you're going to invite that evil in.
Yeah.
But it does open up the possibilities. You're putting yourself below that entity.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I could tell you this, I lecture, all my lectures, I always talk about you and Robert, and I can tell you almost everyone, at least one person raises their hand and has their own story. And I that's one of the slides I use in my presentation.
Yep.
And actually, that was the last time we saw you.
Nice.
But it's amazing because I've heard everything from, the car broke down or the tire blew out or this or that, to one of our library shows. We had a guy come up, and at the end of the show, and he goes, listen, when you talk about Robert, you got to tell people how serious that is, because he said he went down there with his wife. His wife was disrespectful, didn't ask permission, it was totally disrespectful the whole time. They left, and on the way home, they got into a car accident. She got killed. I didn't even know what to say to that. Now, could it be coincidence? Of course. But I mean, I've heard just about everything. And if you remember, it was MegaCon 2 years ago. It was my first day. I set up my whole thing there, and I posted a video of my area. And you commented, you're like, hey, good setup. And I took a picture of my mini Robert, who travels everywhere with me. And I took a picture of him, and I went to post and say, hey, look who made the trip. It was the only picture the entire time I could not post. I would take a picture of anything else, it would post. I would take another picture of that, it wouldn't post. I actually brought it right into the lecture the next hour and showed everybody. It was crazy. I don't know what it was, but it was strange.
People have always had problems with Robert. He wasn't always on display. Since he came to the museum in '94, and he went on display in '96. That's when people started having the camera problems. A lot of it was him draining batteries back then, though. Because before we had all the cell phones. So he was also messing with pacemakers. But that's what started the thing with cameras, because he drained the batteries. But there was a guy who had a photo development place in Key West. He started asking people if they had been to the museum and seen Robert, because whenever somebody had one on their film, his machine would jam. It would get stuck on the picture of Robert and just keep
Yeah.
pressing Robert.
Man, that's insane. So I mean, I guess to tie it into, what we do with the Warren Legacy Foundation, I mean, it sounds really, really similar. It actually worse than Annabelle.
Mm-hmm.
Has there ever been talk of making like a big, high budget Hollywood movie about Robert the Doll?
Yeah, there's been talk before. There were the unauthorized versions. I think they were
Yeah.
straight to video, and those, the guy who did those, I haven't looked up his health lately, but he had some disease that they couldn't diagnose. He was getting evicted. He didn't have money. He had to be moved by ambulance.
Oh, wow.
I mean, he went through hell.
Yeah.
I hope that he's doing okay.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Robert just had the nice documentary on the shock doc. That was on Discovery, I think.
How did I miss that? Gosh, dang.
Oh, it's good. Mark
I'm gonna
Muncie's on there too.
I'm gonna start making a list here of all the stuff I got to go watch.
But it's certainly a story that would be ideal in Hollywood. And it's interesting. You mentioned Annabelle. I always, people say Robert's the world's most haunted doll. And when you tell people that, they'll say, what about Annabelle? And I say, well, Annabelle got the Hollywood treatment.
Yep, exactly.
But you can count on one hand the number of people who have been cursed by Annabelle.
Yeah.
And if you do that with Robert, you need thousands of hands.
Yep. I mean, I could be wrong, but Annabelle doesn't have, thousands of letters sitting in the Warren Museum, begging for forgiveness. So
right. And in all fairness, it's harder to see Annabelle because, Robert, people can come out on a ghost tour there every night. They can go up and see him in the museum every day.
Yep.
And I don't think there's been many issues of people that saw Annabelle having issues. I don't think.
No, it's been a disrespect thing, just like with Robert the Doll. It's people that have disrespected Annabelle that have the issues. So,
right.
Yeah, and most of that was initial, and then I think there was one motorcycle accident or something.
Yeah, something. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there was a car accident too with a priest. I think.
Okay.
Yep. And then there definitely was a motorcycle accident with somebody's boyfriend or something like that. But those are a couple of the stories. So why don't you tell us the story, because there are some versions of the story of Robert the Doll. So why don't you tell us exactly what happened and how, why is this doll so haunted?
Yeah. So Robert was created in 1904. And there's a lot of misinformation about, people say, oh, he was created by an angry nanny or an angry servant. I was able to uncover that he was, in fact, created by the Steiff Company in Germany. And that's the company that invented the teddy bear. They made him around 1904. He was originally a clown. He was given as a gift to a Key West boy named Robert Eugene Otto. And if you think about it, Otto, German name, his grandfather had emigrated from Prussia. So the family used to exchange gifts. His mother brought it back to him in 1904. He would have been 4 years old. She gave him the doll. And by all accounts, he became very enamored with the doll. He gave it his own name because his full name was Robert Eugene Otto. And he started going by his middle name. And they shared clothes. The sailor uniform that Robert wears today belonged to Jean. And if you haven't seen Robert, he's a life-size doll. I mean, he stands about 4 feet tall.
Yeah.
He's stuffed with straw. He's covered with felt, dressed in a sailor suit. His face looks like a burn victim because termites ate through the felt.
Ooh.
So, and he's got these black button eyes that'll pierce right through you. So Jean becomes attached to the doll. They go everywhere together. Whenever he got in trouble for the things that kids get in trouble for, he didn't take the blame. He could be heard saying, I didn't do it. Robert did it.
Yeah.
And, regular childhood mischief.
Yeah.
They say that he used to push the servants into the closet and hold the door shut so they couldn't get out. Robert did it. Robert did it. And so this goes on through childhood. Then Jean grows up, goes off to Paris because he wanted to be an artist.
Yeah.
And he studied under the great artists there. And he met a woman named Annette Parker. and she was touring the world on the piano circuit. She was this brilliant concert pianist. So they get married, spend some time in Europe, then spend about a decade in New York. And when they would have been in their late 30s, early 40s, and Jean's mother got sick. So they moved back to Key West. She dies. The house is left to them. They move into his childhood home.
Oh, wow.
And that's when Robert reemerged.
Yeah.
And you hear the different accounts. They say that, Anne was okay, moving to Key West, kind of a big deal, but their dynamic changed. They went from being a happy couple, having fun, writing music together, to where Gene was jealous of her. And he had this hometown pride. And so he tells her, he goes, "You're not going to play your piano anymore. I'm going to be the artist. You're going to be the artist's wife." They say she was freaked out when he introduced her to his best friend in Key West, and it was Robert the Doll. And then he'd spend hours with Robert. He'd be painting. A lot of the stories, the first ones to really go public, where you have a lot of people talking about this, 1950s, kids used to go by the house and they'd look up in the window and they'd see Gene painting. And it's this beautiful old house, and it had this turret room with plenty of windows around. They'd see him painting because the light was good up there. And then they'd see Robert in the other window moving around on his own.
Is that the room that's on top of the house?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. That's the turret room, or the cupola. And people can actually stay in that room now. It's a great bed and breakfast called the Artist House. It was named after what Gene did. But the Robert stuff, it starts going around town. Then people said it's the haunted house. They'd stay away. A lot of people would cross the other side of the street. They still do. And then they say Gene would abuse Anne, that he pushed her into a closet and held the door just like he did to the servants. And when he was blamed, he'd say, "I didn't do it. Robert did it."
Oh, wow.
So Gene gets sick, Parkinson's. And he spent his last 10 years up in that room with Robert, slowly losing his mind. When he dies, his wife is devastated because he wrote her out of the will.
Oh, wow.
He left her the house, but none of its contents. She couldn't afford to be there. He left that stuff to his sister. So so she sold the house for $50,000, moved up with her sister outside of Boston, and died of pancreatic cancer a few years later. That's when other people started renting the house and coming in there. There was a guy who claimed that Robert gave him yellow fever and locked him in the attic. There was a plumber doing work there. He heard giggling behind him. He turned around. Robert was moving from one side of the room to the other. You get dozens and dozens of accounts from these other people going in the house saying there's something that's not right with that doll. And then the house was sold to Myrtle Reuter. And she had been a friend of the Ottos. She had lived across the street. And she bought the house. And I talked with her mother-in-law. And she said that Myrtle just wasn't the same after Robert came into her life.
Because is this true, or is this rumor that when she bought the house, that the house had been emptied out except for Robert the Doll was still sitting in the turret room?
The sister took all the valuable antiques and the things like that. And Anne was left there. And so Myrtle bought the house. She bought it with the help of Bill Geiser, who owned an inn across the street. And he had been great friends with Anne. He was a hairdresser at the time. And I talked to him for several hours, and he helped me understand the dynamics going on with the Otto family. And he didn't want to talk about Robert. He said to me, he goes, "I should have burned that doll."
Yeah. Oh no,
because
he shouldn't have.
He felt that it ruined the legacy of his friends. And Gene was this brilliant artist. People don't talk about his art. They talk about his haunted doll. And then Anne, she's this incredible pianist. And, you hear the stories about her and how she brought life into the room. And so I totally get where Bill was coming from. But with what he told me, it built out that dynamic. And the one question I asked him about Robert, I said, so because what he did is he bought the house for Myrtle because I think she didn't have the credit for it. So it was under his name initially, then he transferred it to her. I said, was Robert in the house when you bought it? And he goes, oh yeah. He was in the cedar trunk in Jean's bedroom on the second floor. Now, Jean's bedroom is one of the middle rooms. He and Ann had separate bedrooms.
Okay.
And he said to Ann, he said, oh, does Robert come with the house? And I asked him, I said, well, what did she say? And he told me that she said, I hate that effing doll.
Yeah.
It was Jean's best friend. Of course, he never could make any friends of his own. And that was really key because hearing it direct from someone that had talked to, hearing how much she actually hated the doll, because we all see how legends can grow and spread and a story mixed up in its retelling. So that was very clear evidence to me that, a lot of these legends do have true basis with Anne not liking the doll and the things that it did to her.
You said in your book that you actually accidentally stumbled upon this story because you were actually investigating that house for another story you had heard.
The Ghost of Ann Otto. I'd been at the library and, I'd been looking for ghosts in Key West to start a ghost tour. This is back in 1996. And I was finding nothing. And then I hit the treasure trove in the archives. They had a folder full of newspaper clippings from the past 50 years about hauntings. And I plotted them out on a map, and I knock on the door at the artist house. And it was owned by a guy named Daryl Myers at the time. And I told him, I'm starting something called a ghost tour, and I want to talk to you about your ghost. And he said, oh, you want to hear about Robert? I said, no, I want to hear about Ann. He goes, nah, you want to hear about Robert. So he starts telling me this story about a haunted doll. And I thought, ooh, this guy's cuckoo. Yeah. And then he says, do you want to see the attic where Robert lived? I said, yeah.
Heck yeah.
And the phone flew off the hook towards us.
Yeah.
Extended out, shot back. I kind of look at it and he looked like, he goes, that's him. And he said something like, he's expecting us. We started going, a bookshelf opened up like a bookcase. The door opened after he passed it to stop me from going up. And then when we get up in there, the room was still furnished. Robert wasn't there anymore, but the attic was still furnished with Robert's furniture, and it was little chairs and little tables. And it looked like a little creepy kid tea party. Wow. Place. And the energy in the room changed. There was this very negative heat energy that filled the entire room. I was convinced I was going to throw up if I didn't get out of there. And it was one of those things that just changed in an instant. And I'd been around haunted houses before, but this was it was unlike anything I had ever encountered. And I hadn't spent a lot of time as a ghost hunter or a paranormal enthusiast or anything at that time. I believed in ghosts. I'd been on, a ghost tour in Scotland. But I left and I asked him where the doll was. He told me it was at the Fort East Martello Museum. So I started making some calls, and the staff didn't want to show him. They're like, no, you have to call back when somebody else is working. And I finally got a hold of the curator, and we arranged for me to see him. And I went up there, and she brought him out from the back room, and she was kind of cradling him like a child, and she was talking to him.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh my God, another crazy person. And she set him down the table. I took some photos. He did not look haunted. He looked like a regular doll. Old, but no, I didn't detect any presence in him. And took a few photos. And then I wanted to get a picture of him without his hat. So I leaned in to grab his hat. And as soon as I touched the brim of it, boom, he came alive.
Yeah.
And I tell you, that doll changed. He transformed. He no longer looked like that inanimate object. You could see a presence in there, and the presence did not like me touching his hat. And I tried to get my camera to take pictures of it. The camera wouldn't function. I'd put it down. It would take shots of something else. I'd take again, it wouldn't function. And then I want to make sure that I'm getting this in the right order. Yeah. So after it wouldn't take the pictures, I put it down, and it was like Robert laughed.
Oh,
It was like you could kind of sense him smirking, if you know what I mean.
yeah.
Like, ha 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 ha, got you.
Yeah.
And then that energy that was in him went away, and it looked like an inanimate object again.
Huh.
And that's what made me realize, I'm like, okay, yeah, there's something here.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what set me on my journey where like, I've got to find out what that
Yeah.
I got a question. Didn't you, after you, because I remember sitting down there in Key West with you, it was pretty soon after you wrote the book.
Mm-hmm.
Weren't you having some issues after, or didn't you encounter some issues spending that much time with him at the time and doing the book?
Yeah, I went through absolute hell. And at the time, I didn't realize there were multiple entities within him. And I also was following that bad guidance of you should ask permission. So,
Right.
with the book,
Mm-hmm.
I'm like asking permission. And I started having problems at the same point in writing it every time. And it was weird electrical problems, like first lights flickering, then like strong voltage coming out of my fingers to where like I'd touch something, it would throw my arm back and like almost throw my shoulder out. Large objects started like raising up and coming towards me when I'd be out walking the dog, and I got yanked out of my bed. Things that sound pretty insane. It was to the point where I put out a plea on social media saying I need help. And for me to do that back then, because I had that ego at the time where I'm like, oh, I'm Mr. Ghost Guy, I know everything. It made me realize that I knew absolutely nothing, and I was terrified. So somebody who practices Santeria locally, and that's kind of like an African Cuban religion.
Yep.
They came over, and they were able to help me, and they removed dozens and dozens of spirits from me that were possessing me. And I mean, they really saved my life. I was at wit's end with everything that was going on.
What do you think is the actual entity that is, Robert the Doll? I mean, you said it's multiple, but I mean, this ties into a question that somebody asked, so we'll just ask it that way. So, has anyone ever conducted a session with Robert to see why he does things to people?
A lot of people, we do VIP ghost tours where people can get an extra hour after the guided tour to do their own investigations, and we provide spirit boxes, dowsing pendulums, Ouija boards, all that stuff. So a lot of people have done these things. What I've found, it's very interesting because the oldest legends about him said he was created by an angry nanny or angry servant. And in researching that, I was able to find, we know he's a Stiefdoll, but I found a servant attached to the family named Emmeline Abbott. And her husband were servants for the Ottos. She was a nanny to Eugene.
Okay.
And I found in the newspapers, where she filed a lawsuit against the estate of Dr. Thomas Otto, Gene's father. So that makes her an angry nanny at one point.
Yeah.
So it's like, yes, that's probably who we're talking about. And then the really cool thing with her, in the 1900 census records, she doesn't show any children. But in 1910, and keep in mind, Robert arrived in 1904.
Yeah.
In 1910, she shows 0 children living, 1 child deceased. So she lost a kid around the time Robert the Doll arrived. When she lost her kid, she would have gone to the doctor that she worked for, Gene's father.
Okay.
And he ran the practice out of the house in the first room there. So I think she brought her child in, and the child died in the room. And the child's spirit entered Robert the Doll.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
And then we've had some psychics who have confirmed this as well, who picked up on the same thing when they filmed the shock doc down there. Cindy Kaza, who came in, she picked up on all of this stuff. And what she felt was that Emmeline blamed the doctor for not saving her child. So she sought out a voodoo practitioner who put a curse on the family. So that might have been what locked the things into the doll. But what I think happens now, so you've got a child, I think Robert's true spirit's a little girl, daughter of Emmeline Abbott, so a little Bahamian American girl. but it's not really a child's spirit anymore because it's 117 years old.
Right.
So it's kind of changed.
Right.
And when people come in though and stick out their tongue at Robert or flip Robert off or just act like jackasses, you've got this little kid whose feelings get hurt, and it kind of tags these people. Like imagine if it had sticky tar on his finger, it would just kind of tag the person that was disrespectful. And
Yeah.
that's when these other entities come out. And
Okay.
the two that I'm most familiar with, they're about 8 feet tall, very dark creatures, and they tend to lurk around Robert's case a lot. We've captured them with different equipment. People have described them on multiple occasions. We've gotten some photographs of them. So those seem to be the two main ones. And they'll latch on to whoever is disrespectful and follow them home and make their lives hell. If they're busy, I'm told that there's an unlimited supply of entities in there
Yeah.
willing to protect this kid, seek revenge on behalf of this child.
You're definitely not helping me get Vivian in there. she's watching. There's no way she's ever getting in there now. I almost was trying to convince her, but no.
Yeah, Vivian, we're making this all up. This is all just completely fabricated. So just listen to Bill. Go see it. It'll be fine.
Come on down. We'll give you some Robert rum to get calm your nerves.
Oh boy, we're gonna have dog issues here. So let's get back to a couple more questions in here. Does let's see. Does Robert like you calling him a creepy kid?
Probably not. But one of the things I've found, so I've spent a lot of time with Robert. So the museum, it's operated by the Key West Art and Historical Society.
Right.
It's Key West's oldest nonprofit. So the museum owns Robert, and they treat him as an artifact, and they preserve him. They're the ones who take care of him. So I've been working with the museum for a long time. And so what my company does, we do the ghost tours there at night. So after the fort closes in the daytime, that's when I come in. And so I've spent a lot of time with Robert. And even before we were doing the tours up there, I've researched him for 26 years. So I spent thousands and thousands of hours with Robert. So what happens is I can probably get away with saying things that other people might not, because when I'm setting up for the tour and setting up the chairs in Robert's room, I talk to Robert. I tried to teach Robert to count in Spanish and in English and in German. And I have a book on Bahamian history that ties into the time that his family would have been over there, if Emmeline is indeed his family. And I'll read a paragraph or two from that. So I do these things to nurture Robert. And I talk to the child. And when we do the tours, we try to tell people, pay attention to the child. So we know that we're trying to nurture that. So I don't think there would be that offense when I describe it in this way, because what we're doing is we're ultimately helping. We're stopping the people who go in there expecting Chucky.
Yep.
Because when they go in looking for that, that's what they're going to get.
Right. Let's see. We got another question here. Where was it? So I'll just put it up here. Do the workers in the museum issues, or the workers, do they have issues too? The museum workers?
Absolutely. And there's people who work there in the day. I've seen several who don't last more than a day or two. A lot of them less than a couple of weeks, because of the things that happen regularly with Robert. The ones that you get in, they're the ones who understand Robert as a child and feel the same way about nurturing Robert.
Yeah.
Those ones will last a long time, and they build these incredible relationships. And Robert almost acts as a protector for them.
Yeah. What about your tour guides? Because you have some new tour guides, right?
The last one just left.
Did he?
No, we had a girl, and she was going to be great. She came in and trained for a couple of nights, and then she said, "I'm a little unnerved. I'm not going to be able to continue with this." And we said, "Did something happen?" And she said, "Yeah, a book flew off the shelf at her in the gift shop." So that happened, and then Another one of our tour guides, he actually moved up to Fort Lauderdale because he works in the hotel industry. And before he was going, um, Robert started, there's a chalkboard where people can write messages to Robert.
Mm.
Messages started coming up with his name on it, and and specific writing about letting him go and whether or not he could leave. And he had developed this incredible relationship with Robert. So I think it's
Yeah.
another one of those same things. Robert doesn't like people leaving him,
Mm.
which you can understand. He had Jean all of his life, then Jean disappears, and then he had
Yeah.
Myrtle, and then Myrtle Reuter brought him to the museum after she said that he locked her into her bedroom and held the doorknob and wouldn't let her out.
Yeah.
That's how he got there. But so he's, the people who have been closest to him have left him in the past.
Mhm.
Now I took a vacation last year because I found out, this is really wild. My great-great-great-grandfather, the first David Livingston Sloan,
Yeah.
he was in the Pennsylvania 47th Volunteers in the Civil War. He was with the Union. Pennsylvania 47th Volunteers were in charge of Key West for most of the Civil War.
Oh, wow.
And they built the fort where Robert the Doll is.
Yeah.
So,
That's crazy.
so there's this weird family connection. And I only
Yeah.
found out about it a couple of years ago. So I started following in his footsteps and going to the places where he was involved in the different battles.
Yeah.
And I did that last year. And it was the trip from hell. Everything that could go wrong went wrong.
Mm.
And I'm not talking about one or two things. Every step of the way, to the point where towards the end, I'm like, that's it. I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
And I decided to abort the rest of the trip, booked a flight from where I was to fly home. As soon as I did that, the best way I can describe it, it's almost like I dropped into a coma, but I was still very aware of what was happening around me.
Yeah.
And it was the weirdest, deepest kind of sleep. And then I thought I was having a heart attack.
Mm.
And I was convinced it was the end. I'm like, yep, that's it. And I kind of like clutch my chest and I roll over onto my side. As I did that, something slid out of me. And the best way I can describe it is like it was a shell of me. It was shaped like me. And it looked kind of like Gollum from the Lord of the Rings, which sounds so stupid. And I know how stupid that sounds. But it slid out of me. It slid across the bed and it looked very confused. And then it disappeared. And everything was fine after that. The bad things stopped happening.
Yeah.
I made my way back to Key West. And I still don't quite know what to make of that. I don't know if that was one of the spirits of Robert. And if we'd become so close from spending so much time together that maybe he was with me when I left, and he just wanted to be back at the fort.
Yeah.
I really don't
Maybe
understand it, and it's something that I've only talked about a couple of times. But there's these weird attachments that definitely happen, and everybody involved over there has something happen at one time or another.
Yeah. We got another question I wanted to get to real quick. So do you get activity just by talking about Robert?
Yes.
Okay. So everybody here should potentially say a prayer of protection afterwards or during.
Yeah. I mean, it never hurts. And a lot of times when we do podcasts about Robert, if he's around, people will start having technical things that go wrong. There'll be some weird technical things. There have been a lot of times where people have listened back to sections and they'll hear EVPs where you can hear something somewhat unexplainable.
Well, we've already been told by one of our resident psychics and a good friend of me and Bill's that that we have some visitors on our show tonight. So just so that you're aware. I think she said there's at least two, and she doesn't know where they're coming from. If it's me, you, Bill, so. But hey, it happens.
And it could be some of the other ones that are with Robert. So if people are feeling like that pressure, pressure on their chest or head, that's probably what it is.
Yep. We have another question too, and we talked about this in the green room before, but how do you transport him for safety purposes, or is he offended if you don't treat him like a child? Because it sounded like you don't really move him that much because
He doesn't really move much anymore because he's fragile. And
Right.
the museum, like I said, they have to protect him as an artifact. And now because he's so popular, it's one of those things where it's really a security risk
Yeah.
for him to move. And Robert's become a great source of revenue for the nonprofit that owns him.
Yeah.
Right.
And I mean that's just the way it is, and they do have to consider that and watch out for it. So Robert's really he's only traveled I think 4 or 5 times in his life. His first trip from Germany, and we know what happened after that.
Yeah.
Then he traveled up to Tampa for a TAPS conference. Someone disrespected him there and got struck by lightning.
Oh.
And then he came up to see me in Isla Morada a couple of times. I did talks around Halloween. One of those nights, the person who brought him up, when they got back to Key West, it was late. So they didn't go straight to the museum. They kept him in the car overnight. And that night, their cat died.
Oh.
And then he went to see Zach in Las Vegas when Zach Bites opened his museum. So he was on Deadly Possessions. They flew him out first class. He was transported in a golf bag, so he didn't freak out the other people on the plane. And
I would want to be on that flight.
No. Disclaimer on that flight.
Yeah.
For sure.
And then the guy who they called Zach's butler. He was actually an actor, but he touched Robert when he wasn't supposed to, and then he had a stroke later that day.
Oh no, Jesus!
So it's not like good things happen when Robert travels, but the main reason he doesn't travel now is because there's security risks and he's fragile, and his home is in the museum. And so many people come from around the world to see him, and a lot of people would be disappointed if they got to Key West and it's like, oh, sorry, Robert's away.
Yeah.
He's on vacation.
Yep.
Yeah, that's hard. That's hard to do at this point. Just one day away, they're gonna be a lot of people disappointed.
So you said Robert has some friends at the museum. You said you brought your collection there, and there's some other haunted objects at the museum. What all do you have there?
So I've been collecting stuff for about 30 years, and I've only got maybe 20 objects. And like I was telling you before we went live, I call them supposedly haunted objects.
Yeah.
Because I don't think they're all haunted, but some of them have really cool stories behind them anyway.
Yeah.
So we keep those around, and people can investigate and come to their own conclusions. But the museum, it was Key West's first museum of history. So when they formed it, all the locals here, and this is going back to 1950, they started bringing in things from the sponging industry and from the cigar industry and all the different industry of Key West. And there's an old Cuban chug, which are the makeshift boats that they use to escape from there. They've got one where they found 3 ID cards on the boat, no bodies. So the people died on the crossing. And there's different theories about what happened. But there's such a strong presence around there. People who walk by that raft, they'll lose their breath. It's as if they're drowning. That's a very heavy spot. There's an old sea chest that has some type of spirit attached. We don't know who. There's Native American spirits. The whole fort, it's like a really cool Civil War fort.
Yeah.
It serves as the museum. It was built on top of a Native American burial ground. So it's on sacred land. There's an old Native American canoe in there, one of the dugout canoes, which is incredible. That has spirit attachments. And then there's all the soldiers, because the place was a yellow fever hospital during the war. It never saw active battle, but a lot of people died there.
It sounds like a very, very charged piece of property.
Yeah. USA Today, for the last 3 years, for the last 4 years, they've named it one of the most haunted destinations in America.
Yeah.
They're I think in a couple of days they're announcing this year's results, but it was nominated again. So it's definitely, to me, it's one of the most fascinating haunted places in the United States, just because Robert's very tangible.
Yeah.
To get something tangible that's haunted is very rare. So that, I mean, that makes it truly amazing. But then the fort itself and the history behind it and the stories behind all these objects, and you feel the energy.
Yeah, I was gonna say that you can feel it as you walk through there. I've been there a few times, and
Mhm.
you can really feel it through there.
And the energy changes. It's always moving. There's these powder batteries. You know, there are rooms that were built to store the gunpowder for all the cannons,
Yeah.
and they've got these domed ceilings. And there's something about them that makes that conducive, like where they become portals to some degree. And I
Mhm.
don't understand why, but there's 4 of them in the fort, and they have this incredible activity around them. It's like they're just spitting out spirits in those areas, and you
Mhm.
feel the energy change from room to room. You can walk in and feel one thing, and then 10 minutes later, it's a complete different energy.
That kind of ties into this question then, that you're talking about energies and stuff. Rosanna wants to know, do you have any mediumship abilities yourself? And what is your main method of communicating with Robert?
I'd say yes and no. I think from being around spirits for so long and being involved in the ghost world, uh, I've kind of tuned myself more into that realm of things.
Mhm.
I never especially developed my abilities. My friend Cindy Plume, she helps me out with all of that stuff. I'll call her in and I'll say, "Hey, what's going on?"
Yeah.
So she's always been incredible with that, with helping me. And I've had some other psychic friends who can help with stuff like that. The one really cool thing that happened when I went through the misa, with the spirit mass for the Santeria, um, when we were doing that, it was explained to me that I'm so terrible at protecting myself that they assigned me almost like a door lady, and she's one of the Santeria people, and she's like got the velvet rope, and if there's any spirits around, she's like, "Sorry, private party." And she'll communicate to me. Like she'll tell me, here's what's going on in this room, here's what's going on in that room. Hey, here's this, be careful of that. So I'll get that, but I don't really consider myself having strong abilities, but like they'll come through her sometimes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
so
great.
you didn't really protect yourself when you were writing that book.
No,
No.
no, I was terrible. I'd always tell other people to cleanse and protect, and I never did it myself.
I'm the same way.
And it was one of those, I mean, it was one of those ego things. I just thought, hey, I'm the ghost guy, because I started doing the ghost tours. I think there were 2 or 3 in the United States at the time, so it
Mhm.
wasn't like it was this great industry, and it wasn't like uh, everybody was communicating with each other and sharing techniques and things like that. And so I kind of let that go to my head for a while there, and I thought I was above it, and I tell you, it's nothing to humble you like being possessed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's
I was gonna say, like, when I saw you after writing that book, you were a different person for a little while there.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah, I started having dual thoughts when that was going on, and the way it felt to me was like somebody put like a gray pizza dough on my head, and it was sinking into my head, and I could feel it trying to take over my thoughts. And at
Mm.
first, I knew which ones were mine and which ones weren't, and then I
Mhm.
couldn't tell the difference. I mean, it was terrifying. I mean, I feel fortunate that I'm not dead, because I think that's the way it was going.
Alright.
So when you were experiencing that, like, did anything inside of you say, "Look, man, I gotta, get some help, or really beef up my protection," or was that maybe you being influenced not to protect yourself?
No, when that was all going on, that's when I put out a plea on Facebook, and I was like, I need
Okay.
help. I said, don't comment if you can't help me. I'm desperate. I need help. I'm being attacked by something that I can't handle.
Yep.
And and that's actually how I met Cindy. She was one of the first people to call me, and she talked me through uh, a lot of stuff and was able to keep some stuff at bay
Yep.
until uh, it was about a week later, I think, that the Santeria people were able to help me.
Yep.
Right.
So she chimed in the comments here. It says it was really tough on him, and ask about, so she amended this, the hard drives when you wrote the book.
Yeah, yeah. I lost 4 hard drives in
Oh,
the
jeez.
process of writing the book on Robert. And the first one, okay, you know, problem. It wasn't backing up, whatever. But
Right.
then you start backing everything up. And by the time the fourth one went, I was subscribing to backup services where everything, every keystroke was backed up.
Right.
And then, they send you a terabyte drive when it crashes, and everything was on that except the Robert the Doll book.
You gotta love it.
And one or two coincidence, but four.
No, we all know investigating me personally for 35 years
Yeah.
is the thing they mess with the most is electronics. I mean, I've gone places with 20, rechargeable batteries from my video camera, and one worked and they were all charged the night before. It's amazing. My camera gave me problems in there the first time I saw Robert. I have some pictures of him, and I did ask permission because I wasn't playing with that. But especially back then too. But my camera gave me a lot of issues that day in the fort.
Yeah. So you had sent me a couple of videos. I want to go ahead and play those and let you talk about them real quick. Let me find them here. So I'll play it, let you describe it, and then we'll play it again. So
Great.
I think this is the one with the ball. So let's go ahead and show this.
Robert, please forgive me. Robert, I'm sorry. Robert, please remove the curse from my family. He's received over 1,000 letters.
He doesn't like you talking
Did
about
you get that? Did you record that?
I think I did.
Oh my God.
So one of the things that we do during the tour, that toy ball, it was when I first started doing the tours, and the whole courtyard at the fort was flooded. And I walked outside and I was looking at it, and that little ball came in through the back gate and started going right towards me. It came up and stopped at my feet. And I'm like,
Wilson.
I'm like, that's weird. And somebody said, oh, that's Robert saying he wants to play with you.
Yeah.
So I like that. So I kept the ball and I started putting it on the case, because during the tour, I'd have my back to Robert.
Mm-hmm.
And so I told him, I said, listen, if you don't like anything going on, if you don't like what I'm saying, push the ball.
Okay.
That way, with the ball being pushed, I'd be able to see that something was going on.
Yeah.
And it's happened, I think, a dozen times over the course of 4 years. So that's one of the times that somebody captured it. Normally, there's normally no videoing during the tour.
Oh, okay.
Luckily, this person was recording,
Mm-hmm.
and it was so. If you're looking, when you look at the video, the ball is in the upper right corner on top of its case.
Yeah, let's go ahead and watch that again.
And it's a slightly deflated ball too, so it's not like it's going to roll on its own.
Okay. Yeah. Let's check that out again.
Robert, please forgive me. Robert, I'm sorry. Robert, please remove the curse from my family. He's received over 1,000 letters.
He doesn't like you talking
Did
about
you get that? Did you record
I
that?
think I did.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yep. So we got another. Oh, Bill, were you going to say something?
I was just going to say one thing, because I can't respond. I see Allison's question. No, that was not the same night. That was a different night. She has in there asking if when I had the problem with the cameras, if it's the thing I caught in the cemetery. No.
Oh, right.
Different night.
Cool. Yeah. So you sent us another video too. This one's a little more malevolent, I would say. So let's go ahead and watch this, and then I'll have you talk about it.
About the heat of it. Tell me what happened. The cross heated up on my chest, and I was inside. I told Trish, I said, "Man, my chest feels like it's burning. I can't see it. Can you take a picture and show me?"
Oh my God.
Yeah. So that one at first I was like, man, what's he freaking out about? But then when the camera zooms in on the end, it's like, oh, okay, I see it.
And it's really wild. That happened in the Yellow Fever Tunnel. It's a tunnel at the fort where they stored all the bodies when they were waiting for caskets to be built.
Oh, gosh.
And Robert's spirit's not contained just to his case. He's all over the fort, and he watches what's going on. So we don't know if that's him or if that's another entity there. But we've had close to 100 people burned with their crosses. And the wild thing about that one, I had another video I was filming just before that. Somebody else had been grabbed in the tunnel. So I was filming them, and you can see him off to the side, and you see him kind of jump and grab at his chest. So you see the moment that it happens.
Huh. We'll go ahead and watch that one again, because that was, people might have missed
the
it.
heat of it. Tell me what happened. The cross heated up on my chest, and I was inside. I told Trish, I said, man, my chest feels like it's burning. I can't see it. Can you take a picture and show me?
Oh my God.
You can see the
Crazy.
cross burned right into him, and that's
Yeah.
happened to several people.
Yeah.
Where you can see it go right in. Their cross will heat up.
Yep. So that would, I mean, do you think that there is something demonic there,
I don't know.
or is it just bad?
I think there's different energies there.
Mhm.
What I believe happens is I think spirits fill in where the attention is because they all want energy and they just can't go out and eat a sandwich.
Right.
So so I think if I'm telling people that that crosses heat up and burn people and they're focusing their energy on their crosses, I think that it might be a soldier, it might be Robert, it could be who knows.
Yeah.
But I think that they'll go where the energy is. And I've done tests up there trying to create haunted dolls. Trying to explore why is Robert haunted? How does this happen? Can I create a haunted doll?
Yeah.
And I've created dozens of them, by focusing energy. So I think that the ghosts really, I think it's like a restaurant. They're popping in to grab a quick bite to eat, and I don't think it matters to them that they're burning with a cross or they're touching someone's hair.
Yeah.
I really feel that it's a mixture of spirits. I don't think most of them are demonic. I think if we want demonic things to happen, they'll fill in and do that.
Yeah.
And,
Yep.
And over the years of everybody coming through there and doing this, they could be also bringing additional things in. It's like why we tell people don't mess with your equipment in your house, because if you're sitting there playing with it in your house, eventually you're going to have something in your house.
Yep.
Yeah. And if they know the energy's there, if you're making yourself a restaurant for them, they're going to be stopping by to eat.
And I think, places like, Bobby Mackey's, which is not too far from me, but, I don't think that the original claims and spirits are there. I think people have brought so much in, tried to conjure so much in that place. I believe it's haunted, but I don't think it's the original, claims. I think it's, and that could be true with some of the fort. People probably try to conjure things or I mean, I hope maybe you guys keep a closer eye on it, but like people may bring Ouija boards in or do seances or, do some goofy stuff. And,
we provide Ouija boards.
Okay.
I've got 5
promote it.
Like when people do the VIP tour,
Yeah.
they get 1 hour of guided tour, and then they get 1 hour where we turn off all the lights and set them loose, where we get them spirit boxes and K2 meters and we've got the Ouija boards and spirit boards. So there's a lot of that going on, and I do think that definitely enhances the activity and makes more spirits come around to try to find out.
Yep.
We're going to be doing that too, because I've been talking to you before COVID. We were talking about coming down there. And my team keeps really getting on me about it. We got to get down there and do that.
Yeah, you're overdue.
I want to rent the artist house out and then come and do that. So we can get the full weekend.
That's the perfect way to do it.
My wife's screaming now in the other room. I could probably hear her.
No, you're not. No, you're not. Yep. So, man,
but I told you though, she was talking all about Robert on the podcast she did in Brazil last week.
Yeah.
So
now she's not going to anymore.
Yeah.
Tell her she'll have to come apologize to him.
Yeah. Yep. No, so I really wanted to get into some other stuff too, but I mean, I just think tonight flowed so well, talking and focusing about Robert, that we may have to have you on again and get into some of the other stuff, because one of your books, Haunted Key West, is I have not read it, Bill. I'm assuming you have, since you own it, but like there's probably a lot more going on down there. Yeah. Yep. And it's like you said, it's one of the most unique places in the States. That there's no other place like Key West.
Yeah,
in
Key
the
West,
United States.
Key West really is incredible. So incredible. And and your group on here is really incredible too. I appreciate all of the excellent questions. I don't know if we got to them all or not, but
oh no, we never do.
I really appreciate everybody in your group here. So
yeah,
I have to have you on just for a Q&A.
Yeah,
that would be really good. I'd totally be up for that.
Yep. So I guess we'll give one last chance for people to ask a question in the questions. If not, while we're waiting for some questions, so how do people one cool thing is that a lot of historical buildings say that the paranormal community really helps support them.
Mhm.
Because like you said, the museum, I mean, in Robert the Doll, they make a ton of money on that, which supports everything else that they do. So, that's a good thing. But so how do people find the museum and, information about Robert and information about what you do? Give us your personal website, because you got other books that we didn't even get to talk about,
Yeah, the museum is the Key West Art and Historical Society. They're Key West's oldest nonprofit organization. So they take care of Robert and the Civil War fort with a Fort East Martello. They also do the Key West Lighthouse and the Key West Custom House and the Tennessee Williams. So, and they do these great programs for kids. I mean, they do so much for art and history. In the community. So they're fantastic. With Robert the Doll, what I did for everything haunted, my business is Ghost Key West. So ghostkeywest.com leads to that. But what I suggest people start with if they're coming to Key West is go to hauntedkeywest.com. It's a free website that I started to show you haunted hotels, haunted restaurants, haunted bars, haunted museums. And we've got a Robert the Doll section, which will send people to the official sites. So that will link to my tours. It'll link to the museum. There's a Robert the Doll rum, Robert the Doll's red rum.
I got to get that.
It links to that. And also like the online shopping. If people want to buy a mini Robert, this will link them directly to the museum to get the official merchandise. And that's just an overall, I mean, that's like a really good haunted site. I list some of the other ghost tours in town that I think are great. So that's more of the place to start is hauntedkeywest.com.
Okay, cool.
I remember when I one of the first times I went down to Key West and I went on your old tour.
Right.
And it was the first tour, one of the first tours I've seen that actually gave people equipment, which I loved, because I said that's what it needs, it was great. I loved going down there.
Yeah, and we've always tried to innovate. We were one of the first ghost tours, and then when everybody else started doing them, we turned into ghost hunts to give the equipment. We're doing something really cool now. I work with the Key West Firehouse Museum, and that's it's another great nonprofit in town. We just started doing audiophonic ghost tours there, and so it's all smartphone driven. So they'll come in. I've got the narrated tour. We've got the music to set the mood, and people go through, and we've got the headphones to hook up if they don't have their own. But when you listen to the stories in one ear and have the other out to experience stuff, we send people in about 5 minutes apart with just a flashlight. So they get the stories, but they're not distracted. They don't have to risk getting a bad guide who's going to mess up the story and tell you the wrong things or have a dull personality. So that's great. But then they're not stuck with a group because, when you're on a group, when there's 30 people, if you get a jackass in there, they can kill the energy and you don't have anything happen. And that's disappointing. So this way people are just with the people they're with going through the haunted location. And
that's great.
And I think that's going to be the next thing that really starts to trend everywhere, because it's the best way to experience a true haunted location.
Yeah. Yep.
That's a great concept. Yeah.
And though, I have to, for the name of what we, preach all the time, is never ghost hunt by yourself, but I think I would totally be down for that. Is that kind of the you were talking to us before the show about this show called Scared and Alone?
Yeah.
What's that all about? That sounded really cool.
Scared and Alone is so much fun. It's a show that we did. It's we have one cast member, Courtney, who is ghost bait, and she's sent to a different location somewhere in the United States that's very haunted, and she goes in all alone. And she's got her phone with us, so we'll watch. There's a cast of another 4 or 5 of us, and some of us. One of them's a psychic painter, Richard Lale, and he will paint images that he's seeing, and he's incredible, the stuff that he picks up on. And then we'll have different psychics, different people who pick up on things in the house, and they'll talk about what's happening, and we guide the ghost bait through the house. And I like studying up on the history beforehand, and it becomes this great thing where everybody in the comment section watching can share what they're seeing. And I didn't know that we'd get much activity doing this, but there's been a lot.
Yeah.
And people are really participating. They'll say, watch out, I can see a man behind you. Oh, open that door to your left. So it's almost like a choose your own adventure where everybody's picking
Yeah.
each other.
Yep.
The show is great.
It's really cool. So it's called Scared and Alone. We did one season of it, and that's available online.
Is that on YouTube or?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I think there's a Scared and Alone website. So
Yeah, I put that. I've definitely made an extensive list tonight of things that I need to go check out.
Yeah, and there's probably going to be a season 2 coming up at some point.
Cool. So just a little housekeeping before we wrap it up. We are going to do, this, like I said, this is the premiere episode of our season for this year. And tomorrow night, we're going to have Lloyd Auerbach on. So, it's going to be a back-to-back shows. We've never done that before, not to my knowledge anyway. So join us tomorrow night at 8 Eastern with Lloyd Auerbach. Auerbach. I'm sorry. I totally said that wrong. What an idiot. But he's probably not going to come on now. He's probably watching like, yeah, screw that show. But he's a parapsychologist. He's got a master's degree. He's one of the things that he wants to do is get the paranormal community a little more back to science, which is cool. Another thing too, if anybody, if you've got issues at your house and you need help, go to warrenlegacy.com, click contact us, and, fill out the get help form. And if you're interested in joining as well, hit contact us. And then there's a link to fill out an application to be a member. We are looking specifically for people with residential experience because that's primarily what we do. It's all on the down low. We do it quiet. Everything's anonymous. So, that's the primary goal of the Warren Legacy Foundation is to help people. But we do like to, talk about cool stuff like we did tonight. I mean, it was David, you were a fantastic guest. I appreciate you coming on here and chatting with us and,
Yeah, absolutely.
I appreciate you guys.
Yep. Cool. So Bill, do you have anything else before we go?
I think that's it, but I'm going to be talking to you about getting down there very soon.
Great.
Okay. David, is there anything that we missed that you want to plug or shout out or mention before we go? Okay.
Like I said, I appreciate everybody joining in today and all the great questions. And thank you guys very much. It's great talking with you, Jeff, and Bill. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, this was fun. I enjoyed this. So,
yeah, we definitely have to have you back.
Yeah, for sure.
Anytime.
Yep. Because one. Okay, I'm going to ask you one final question before we wrap it up, and then this is it. So, who has the best key lime pie in Key West?
Well, that depends on your preference.
And this is probably a 20-minute.
And for anybody who doesn't know, so I also do a lot of key lime stuff. I started the Key Lime Festival down here, and I used to be a chef, and I researched the history of key lime pie. So there's preference. Do you like it sweeter? Do you like it more tart? Do you like meringue? Do you like whipped cream? So there's so many options. I always suggest that people try several and decide which one's the best themselves. Right now, one of my favorites right now is at the Red Shoe Island Bistro. And that just hits all the things that I like. It's nice and tart. I like a nice thick crust. It's fresh whipped cream. But you can't go wrong. I mean, you can go down to Kermit's and get a key lime pie dipped in chocolate on a stick and eat it walking along the historic seaport. There's so many great ones. I have a friend, Tim Watson, and he says the best key lime pie 100% of the time is the one you're about to eat.
Yeah. This sounds like it's more like wine. Like there's different categories of wine and different categories of key lime pie. So.
We've got some incredible chefs in Key West. So a lot of them use their different backgrounds to add their own personal touch to it. And so and it's really incredible. I mean, just that tartness and the sweetness blending together is pretty magical.
Cool. Well, everybody, thanks for joining us again. Thank you, David, and we will definitely have you back on again because we got lots more to talk about. So,
absolutely.
And this is that awkward thing. Like I never know how to end a show, so I'm just gonna click the end button and
happy hauntings to everybody.
Yes, see y'all tomorrow night.